Shalom and welcome back to Talking Torah. It's nice to be back with you, Rabbi Klein. We've both been teaching through the Talking Torah platform recently, but now we're back together because there is an issue that I think has been on everybody's mind. I'm getting so many questions. Everyone wants to know about Kitniyot. What's the deal with Kitniyot? That's what everybody's saying.
You know, I'm thrilled actually because people are actually taking the issue of Kitniyot pretty seriously,
yeah.
and that's wonderful. And it's opened up a whole new discussion on Pesach, and that's wonderful. I wrote about it in the bulletin article. I don't know how many of our members caught it in the bulletin article, but there I did bring it to the attention of the congregation, and I think it's worthwhile for us to have a full discussion about it. Maybe we should start with, what are Kitniyot,
right,
and why were they forbidden or prohibited 800 years ago, and why did the Committee of Law and Standards of the Rabbinical Assembly decide to overturn that ban this year? So let's look at it this way. Kitniyot are
legumes, I guess is the word that we
word
use.
Always befuddles me.
I mean, right, because I know what Kitniyot are more than I know what a legume is, even though legume is English.
Yeah. But we know Kitniyot are rice and beans and peanuts and peas
and
corn, mustard. So all of those things are Kitniyot. And by the way, none of them really have the potential to become chametz.
That's right.
They can't. They can't.
Right.
The only foods that can become chametz are grains like rye and spelt and barley and wheat and oats. I got all five of them.
Nailed it. I was ready to help you, but you got them.
So about 800 years ago, our rabbis decided to include Kitniyot with those foods that are banned for Passover. We really don't know why. We have ideas, but frankly, you know and I know, there was never a really compelling reason. And then it became custom.
Right.
And tradition, and we followed it, and here we are to this day. So why did the Rabbinical Assembly, Committee on Law and Standards, decide to overturn that prohibition?
You look at a custom like this, which really kind of creates its own narrative and its own legs and its own momentum. And I think that the Committee on Law and Standards was saying, look, it actually made sense at the time. It made very good sense. But now, now that we buy things, the process by which we buy food is different than it was then, and the process by which food is presented to us is different than it was then in an open marketplace where everything's available and easily mixed in. It's time to not say you have to eat Kitniyot or that even Kitniyot is totally fine. It's just time to say, all right, let's remove the overlay of stricture that exists on the Kitniyot and make it a little bit more accessible. It's time. It's time.
So what you said was, in its time it made sense, not because these food items could become chametz.
Right.
It made sense because the way in which food was sold during the course of the Middle Ages, and in fact even up to 100 years ago, or if you go to certain places, you still find foods are sold out of sacks and they're lined up next to each other. So there was a fear of mixing.
Right.
That rice might get mixed up with wheat and wheat with rice, and that suddenly you'd be eating rice with your wheat with your rice, and so people were concerned about these potential mixtures of foods that could become chametz with foods that could not become chametz.
And it's a legitimate concern because even to this day, the rabbis, the ancient sages told us that you have to be so careful that not even the smallest minuscule crumb of chametz get into your food. And so it's not like the rabbis were just saying, oh, it looks too much like it. That the corn looks too much like the wheat or XYZ. Right. They weren't being unreasonable. They were seriously concerned that the way that the food was being sold in the marketplace, that it could easily be that a minuscule crumb, and so better to not eat these foods and not take that risk.
But as you point out, at least in America and in most developed countries, these foods come packaged. Right. They typically do not have any contact with chametz products, and so it was viewed by the Rabbinical Assembly Committee on Law and Standards as being an unnecessary stringency.
Right.
And the committee felt that, especially in an age where so many people are vegetarians, right, they therefore need an expanded Passover menu. And why prohibit to them things that really don't become chametz? And then, because there is so much intermingling and marriage between Ashkenazik and Sephardic Jews, it's not like we're living two separate orbits. We're intermingled, we're married, we have plenty of these families. So that there was a sense that we needed to move towards one definition of what the Jewish people can eat for Passover. So that's the understanding, and you're right. We always have this belief of establishing what we call a geder, a fence. We don't want anything that can be prohibited on Passover, that can be chametz, finding its way into our food. We don't want to, so they establish that fence around these non-chametz items. Just like we have a fence around Shabbat. We light candles 18 minutes before Shabbat begins, so we don't make fire during Shabbat. So now the question is, what do we do with it?
That's right.
Because it's not what the committee said. You don't have to eat these food items. You don't have to eat Kitniyot, but you're free to feel permitted to eat Kitniyot.
Well, and I think forever, the way I always understood Kitniyot, and really all minhagim, right? This is a minhag, which means that it's a custom, but it's been established for so long that it's become law.
Right.
But the way I understand it is that you go with many of these minhagim based on what your parents did, right? That if your parents did this minhag, then you really, out of respect for them, ought to be doing, the tradition really says father, but we're an egalitarian community, so really what your parents observed should be what you observe. And I think that there is strong basis in that belief. So like you said, the question is now a time? Are you ready to make that step? Are you ready to take that step and say, you know what? It's 800 years old. It's not all that. That's relatively new. It's not all that long of a custom, and it really doesn't necessarily apply logically now. So, are you ready? Are you ready to eat Kitniyot on Pesach?
I personally am not, okay? Because based on what you said, yes, there is that statement, minhag avotenu biyadenu, which means that the custom of our forebears is in our hands. And we have to decide, we have to deal with it with great care and great sensitivity. What do we do with these customs? Do we say, nice having you for 800 years, goodbye, I'm going to have my peanuts and my corn and rice? Or do we say, you know what, this is the way my parents did it, this is the way my grandparents did it. And the fact of the matter is, I want to respect that tradition. And I could probably get by for 8 days without eating rice and beans and mustard and peanuts and legumes. I can get by with it, and at the same time feel that I'm just being loyal to the traditions that were passed down to me. And again, I don't see anything wrong with anyone who wants to eat the Kitniyot. It just doesn't mean that I have to follow it or you have to follow it. What are you going to do?
Well, I think I actually talked to my dad about it, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna have to check with, so I have that ability to check with my father about it. So I called him. I said, "What do you want to do?" And he said, "Well, you're the rabbi, so I'm going to leave it up to you." But I look at Kitniyot and I say, not eating corn does not enhance my Passover experience.
Right.
Avoiding beans has never been super meaningful for me. And so I don't have any strong connection to the minhag of avoiding Kitniyot. So if I have the opportunity, if the opportunity presents itself, I may take it. What I was thinking we're going to do, we're going to put some corn on the cob on the Seder plate this year to elicit discussion, because I think it's an important question of where does minhag, where do customs and how long have they existed? I think it's an important question of where does that fit into our modern day ritual. It always has to be on our minds. So I'm going to put it on our Seder plate. But the truth is, are we going to eat Kitniyot? I would, but I don't know where. I don't know how. None of it's going to be kosher or Passover.
I think our people need to understand that the permission to eat Kitniyot doesn't mean you're going to find Kitniyot that would be suitable to eat for Passover. When you choose to eat rice or beans, you've got to get packaged rice or beans that says
that's raw.
That's absolutely raw, unprocessed, because in the processing there could be starches which are chametz. You need to look for, preferably, packaging that says kosher for Passover for those who eat Kitniyot.
Right. And it's hard to find. I looked. You're not going to find it in the 5 towns. You may find it in Great Neck. You may find it in Queens.
Right.
But you're not going to find it in the 5 towns because there's never been a market for that in the United States, because the majority of Jews in the United States are Ashkenazik Jews. In Israel, it's a different story. In Israel, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
In Israel, you can't find kosher Passover food without Kitniyot. But here in America, I don't see it happening. So corn on the cob is the easiest thing, because that we often eat raw. But you can't get a can of beans. You can't just start with a can of beans.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're going to do it, if you're going to take the permission to eat Kitniyot, please, if Passover is important to you, make sure that this is Kitniyot that is permitted to eat for Pesach.
Right.
And if you have a question about that, I suggest you ask us, because it's something that we would be happy to clarify for you. So, as you might have expected, Rabbi Tillis is going to eat it, and I'm not. Is that a surprise to you? So,
I felt like we had to take our typecast roles.
That's right. What if we would have said, I'm going to eat it, and you're not? Oh, I'm going to stand for the tradition.
Yeah. April Fools.
April Fools. So, anyway, we wish all of you a Chag Kasher V'Sameach, whether kasher means with Kitniyot or without Kitniyot. Remember, here in the synagogue, we are not going to have Kitniyot for a reason, because we want to be sensitive to those who would not accept Kitniyot. And frankly, we don't serve a lot of rice and beans and corn and nuts at kiddushes and meals anyway here throughout the year. So I think we can make our way through Pesach without bringing Kitniyot into the shul.
Just like avoiding corn and beans has never been spiritually uplifting for me, I don't think that, I think it's more important that we create a space where everyone can feel comfortable eating here. I think that's absolutely true. But I should say, Chag Kasher V'Sameach, what you said, and it's exactly right, never has Kitniyot been considered unkosher for Pesach. Mm-hmm. We just simply don't eat it. Right? If you went to somebody's house and they ate Kitniyot, and they made Kitniyot, their stuff does not become unkosher for Pesach.
That's right.
And it doesn't become chametz. You can still eat at their house.
Right.
You can even have Kitniyot on your plate, and you simply push it off to the side, and you just don't eat it. So it's impossible for Kitniyot to make us unkosher for Pesach. Mm-hmm. So that's just to fill out that
But-
line of
right.
Chag Kasher V'Sameach.
Sameach. So we hope you do have a Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Visit with your community in the shul on Pesach. Really,
Yes.
it's a wonderful place to bring your family for Pesach. It's all about the people of Israel being a part of the Jewish people and experiencing that, whether it be at your Seder table or in the synagogue. We would absolutely be thrilled to see you.
Yes, absolutely. And so on behalf of all of us and our families, we wish you and your family a Chag Kasher V'Sameach, a happy and fulfilling Passover.
Shalom.